Kia ora koto katao, and warm welcome to Talk 3 of the Connect and Develop series for 2023. I'm Peter Papagiannis, Alumni Relations Manager here at the University of Auckland, and I am indeed a real human and not an AI robot. It's great to have so many people here today with us. We actually had over 400 people register for today's session, and so many of us are keen to know, is AI a workplace threat or opportunity? And what I personally love about the Connect and Develop series is that you can learn so much in such a short period, and you have the opportunity to ask questions to amazing experts. Our expert and speaker today is Dr. Daniel Xu, who holds a PhD in bioengineering and a first-class honors degree in mechatronics engineering from the University of Auckland, and was named one of our 40 under 40 inspiring alumni back in 2021. Joining Daniel today is our MC, Dr. Jason Tam. Jason is also a UOA alumnus and started at the university as a physics student and later returned as a machine learning researcher. While undertaking his doctoral research at the world-renowned CERN in Switzerland, while he was there, he was inspired to start a career in data science. Jason has spent time working in both academia and industry and across various technical disciplines where modern technology, including AI, can transform traditional data practices for greater efficiency. This includes his current role as senior statistical data scientist for the Dunedin company, Oratain, who provide forensic verification for agricultural products. On behalf of all of us here at the university, I'd like to say many thanks to Daniel and Jason for being part of this series. We cannot run this series without alumni volunteering their time, so we're very appreciative. And everyone joining us, I encourage you to tap into the amazing wealth of knowledge and experience during the Q&A portion of this session. Over to you, Jason.
Thanks, Peter. Great to be here. Before I start introducing Daniel, I want to cover a few tips for participating in today's webinar. The Q&A function at the bottom of your on-screen Zoom panel is live. Please submit your questions at any time. We'll be monitoring them as we go. I also encourage you to upvote the questions you find the most interesting, and these questions will move to the top of the Q&A screen. Towards the end of today's webinar, Daniel will be answering some of the highest rated questions. And now on to introducing today's speaker. Dr. Daniel Xu is the CEO and co-founder of ElementX, an applied artificial intelligence agency originally called Spark 64. The first product, UV Lens, has helped over 1 million people around the world to better manage their UV exposure. As the principal inventor of multiple licensed patents, Daniel's work has been featured on global media, including the BBC. Daniel is passionate about empowering young entrepreneurs and is an advisor for a number of innovation organizations and accelerator programs. He's the chairperson on Return on Science, a national science commercialization program, and was the founding chair of Momentum, New Zealand's first student-led investment committee. Over to you, Daniel.
Perfect. Thank you, Jason, for the kind intro, and welcome everybody. I think we're going to have a really fun, just an awesome session today. Let me just bring up my screen. I've got a couple of slides I want to share with everybody, and then we can get into the conversation. So really awesome to have this conversation. So Peter mentioned around human, and that he is indeed human. So quick quiz. One of these images is not a real person. So just take a moment and just take a guess yourself, which one is not real. I'll just give a couple more seconds. So one of these images is artificially generated. The other is a real human. So here's the big reveal. The person on the right-hand side indeed is not actually a real image. This comes from a website called thispersondoesnotexist.com, which is a really fascinating technology where AI is, because clearly this fooled me when I first saw it, and it shows kind of the power and the potential of AI being very much a double-edged sword. On one hand, you've got technology like this, where I've talked to multiple people who work in fashion, retail, marketing, advertising, where you can effectively programmatically generate realistic looking people to however characteristics you like. And on the other hand, the technology can be exploited. We recently saw over in Ukraine where people made deep fakes of President Zelensky telling the Ukrainian troops to surrender. So obviously this technology has lots of potential for both good and bad. So let's get into kind of a little bit around where we are with AI. So here's a graph around some of the venture funding that's gone into AI in the last decade. And what you see is there's been an absolutely enormous amount of money pouring into the industry. And it's primarily led by China and the United States being two of the leading AI superpowers in this game. What you've seen is obviously there's a bit of an outlier in 2021. This was when the tech valuations kind of went skyrocketed, and then afterwards it kind of reset in 2022. But overall, there's been a huge amount of money, and what that money has done is it's brought in a lot of people into the industry. And it's provided those people with capital and resources to make better products, better services, better businesses, which in turn has attracted more money and more people and even better technology. So AI is a really fascinating industry at the moment. I'm very grateful to be working in this industry, and there's a lot of excitement. So a little bit of an example of where that money has gone into and what the impact of that. So this is speech recognition. Most people will be familiar with using services like Siri, Alexa, your smart speaker at home. And you can see that over the last couple of years, AI has reached the level of human accuracy in terms of detecting and text and voices. And that's unlocked a lot of capabilities such as transcription, translation, summarization, answering questions. So it was really unlocked a lot of opportunities from that. If you look at images, this is around object identification or classification. And you see that in about 2012, there was a big breakthrough where the error rate came down quite significantly. And in about 2015, similarly, AI was almost as good as a human in terms of classifying images, such as this is an image of a cat. And a lot of the other things that has happened is it's allowed us to do a lot more advanced things. So in the past, you'll see a car and a number plate, and it might do a simple number plate recognition or an optical character recognition, just picking up the number plate. But now, yeah, you're able to really analyze traffic flow patterns. This is a fast food restaurant drive-through, and you can just do things like count how many cars is coming through, how long cars are spending in the queue, what type of passengers in the car. So you're able to create this rich set of analytics with the new capabilities. It's also allowed us to move a lot of the applications outside of the controlled robotic type factories where everything's in ideal conditions to very realistic real world scenarios, such as picking fruits out where there's variable lighting, variable weather conditions. You have limited processing on board, limited connectivity. So a lot of the AI work has gone into moving AI closer to the edge and into the real world scenario. We've also, Jason will love this, been a data scientist. We're also creating a whole lot more data as a result. So in the past, you might have an AI algorithm where it could detect the presence of a car, and it might say something like 99% confident that this is indeed a car. But now there's a whole new additional rich set of metadata that we're also able to interpret. Things like in a motorcycle, you're able to know at the proximity of this vehicle across other vehicles around it, the location of certain things in an image. So there's a lot more richness of information that we're able to capture. And a lot of that information is really unlocking business insights. So things like having a normal CCTV security camera is now able to detect flow of customers in a shop. You're able to identify layout optimization, shelving restock, and even at some point detect behavior such as people shoplifting, for example. So the possibilities of bringing in additional insights through AI is now quite tremendous. I'm sure everybody's played with ChatGPT in the last couple of months. The underlying model, GPT-4, that's been used to power this tool is really good. If you look at how it performs against a series of university grade entrance exams, it's scoring in the really high percentile, like 90 percentile in the bar exam. You're doing really well in the SAT, although it hasn't done very well in the AP calculus course, and it's one thing I'm very proud of, that I think I can still beat GPT-4 in calculus. But what we're seeing is AI is disrupting jobs globally, and particularly knowledge worker jobs that were traditionally seen as human roles. So things like being able to decorate a room. This comes from a service where you could take a photo of your living room, and an AI algorithm could then go and create 100 different layout, furniture configurations. We're seeing a lot more AI in customer service, customer support, in the form of virtual assistants, digital humans, and even writing software, writing code. Our team at ElementX, we've just got everybody onto GitHub Copilot, so everybody is using that as a programming aid to help them as they write software. And pretty much what we're seeing is that AI is becoming better and better in a number of tasks compared to humans, from everything from like playing games, chess, Mario Kart, detecting disease and cancer, predicting the weather, identifying anomalies. So there's a growing list of jobs and functions that AI is getting really good at. This kind of brings me to a quote. Andrew Ng, most people may know as the godfather of AI. He's touted as saying that AI is really like the new electricity. And actually, if you look at how AI is being priced at the moment, this is not related to, you might see headlines like Microsoft putting $10 billion into OpenAI. Well, that $10 billion really translates into a democratization of AI for most people. And AI is actually quite accessible. It's starting to look more and more like a utility subscription, from very basic packages that are quite accessible. Just using a credit card, you can start experimenting and playing with AI. So the next part of this talk, I want to just give you guys some ideas around how AI might help in terms of your work and in terms of your workflow. I want to make sure I just kind of caveat, I'm talking specifically about AI helping you as an individual contributor in terms of the work and the productivity gains you may get for your own work, as opposed to at the organization level. At the organization level, there's a whole different set of things that need to be considered, things like an overarching AI strategy. There's a lot more complexity into AI at the organization level. So I'm just going to focus around the individual level. So one of the first things that I'm seeing a lot is people are taking AI and then using it in their workflows for productivity gains. Things that normally would take quite a bit of time, and you can actually use AI to automate or simplify quite a few of the processes. We recently worked with a company and where we mapped out the entire workflow for a process, identified parts of the areas where it takes quite a bit of time and stages. And these stages could be things like ideation, for example, generating conceptual ideas, capturing information from a variety of sources, searching documents, particularly things like looking at a massive 200-page report, and picking up important terms, important information that you want into your workflow. Things like converting data, formatting data, that's a whole new area where it's quite a repetitive work. checking compliance, quality assurance, and even report writing to some extent. So one of the things I'm seeing is being able to really break down your workflow into very discrete tasks that happen quite repetitively and quite frequently. And those become really good avenues into introducing AI into your workflow. And in terms of how to adopt some of these tools, there are now a growing list of off-the-shelf, ready to go AI tools that have been built already. Things like summarizing text, correcting your grammar, extracting keywords from your text, even writing interview questions, practicing interview questions. Perhaps one of my favorite is around the emoji chatbot. I personally suck at writing or figuring out the right emojis to use. This is a great tool where you can input some text into this thing, and it'll give you the most appropriate emoji that you should be replying with. And all of these tools, services are openly available, they're publicly available, and it's quite easy to onboard. And part of this is a trend and movement that I'm seeing a lot in AI lately, is around this democratization of making AI really accessible to use. So in the past, you might have to have a 4-year engineering or a computer science degree in order to just access and try some of the stuff. Whereas now there are this democratization of making low code or no code even AI that's using prompts, that's really simplifying or lowering the barrier to entry to experimenting with some of these tools. And of course, one area that we're seeing a lot of popularity lately is in generative AI. So generative AI is around using AI to create things like content. Tools like Midjourney, for example, was able to very efficiently create photorealistic images. I often use it for making PowerPoint presentations, stock images. It's just a really powerful tool, and there's been a growing field of people who specialize in how to use these AI tools to generate the images that you want. And another field of generative is in 3D models, and this can save a lot of time. And we've seen companies use tools like this where you can type essentially into a box a text of what you would like to create, and you can have the AI generate tens and hundreds of different characters, models as starting points for design. This is probably a really good summary of the generative landscape that comes from Sequoia, and it just shows that some of the use cases in both from a content perspective and text generation, writing software, creating images, text, video, even 3D models. It's quite a growing field. So lastly, I'll just discuss some of the considerations around using some of these tools in your workflow, especially if it's for work-related work. So firstly, it's really important to understand your organization's data and AI policies. This is probably the most important thing. I'm seeing people who are unaware of what the privacy policies are and what the data policies are, and run risk of not aligning the appropriate standards. In our company, our CTO Ming has written our own AI policy, and it documents some of the best practices and what we should be doing and what we shouldn't be doing, specifically around working with customer data. And the other thing is around making sure you're using the appropriate environment or using the appropriate tools for your data and your use case. So for example, you can actually disable chat training history in OpenAI to create a bit more security for the data that you're working with. And actually, if you want a level of security or privacy beyond that, rather than using the OpenAI services, you can actually use the Microsoft Azure version, which has an extra level of security for an enterprise level. And finally, it's really important to only use AI in the domains that you really understand, because it just helps to have you as a human in the loop to do that final step of quality assurance and safety checks. So specifically, I want to cover content writing, because I'm sure most people have tried putting things into ChatGPT, whether it's to write your exam essays or copywriting or emails even. And there's a couple of things that I think you could do immediately. So firstly, you want to be really specific about what you want AI to write. AI it has a breadth of knowledge, but if you don't constrain it into very precise instructions, then it can end up generating a lot of garbage. We have a rule at work where we all replace all proper nouns, alias names when we do use a tool like that. It just has an extra layer of privacy, meaning there's absolutely no risk of a name being identifiable beyond this. We always check the outputs to see if they make sense in person, especially if you're putting it into a report. Our kind of rule of thumb is assume everything is incorrect, and then go and manually do fact checks to make sure that any statements, any references it gives is legitimate. Some of you guys may have seen lately in the news where a lawyer got into trouble because they had used OpenAI or ChatGPT to come up with reference cases, but actually when they dug deeper, those cases actually weren't real. So you want to make sure that you are manually fact checking some of the outputs. Another suggestion I'm seeing a lot is around how do you start? How do you start using some of these tools? And quite often I see people go and gravitate towards let's use AI on the hardest, most difficult task I can think about. And you know, I can understand that, because it might be the most valuable piece of work, but it might also be the most difficult to get started. So kind of what I like to kind of recommend is start with something that's simple and get familiar with the tools. And you know, I'm sure many people use Grammarly as a spell check to help with your writing. So there's a lot of lower entry tools that you can start with without needing to get into some of the really complex services. And really you want to take time to test whatever you're using AI for. This is an example of one of the earlier Tesla self-driving car models where that they have failed to test one of these edge cases where the vision cameras would see a stop sign, and what they realized was that if you tamper with the stop sign, like if you put in a couple of icons over it, often with graffiti, the AI may misinterpret the stop sign for a speed limit sign, and then it'll accelerate the car. So these are very specific edge cases, and I'm sure there's a lot more, but it's really important to, as you're testing as you're using AI in the workflow, make sure that you are doing your boundary tests or extreme case testing to know that, okay, where is the boundary of comfort that I can use this tool. And finally, I just encourage everyone to be patient with AI. It is a growing field. It is getting better all the time. And I see a little bit like teaching, especially like teaching kids. If you have kids, it takes quite a bit of time and effort to get it right, but it'll be all worthwhile in terms of improving your workflows, your productivity, and there's lots of benefits that will come out of that. So with that, I think we're good here. So Jason, I think we can start with some of the questions.
Okay, thanks Daniel for that very interesting talk. So you've provided us with an overview of what AI is and how it's in the industry, how it's a double-edged sword that we have to be careful about. there are already a lot of industry applications already in action in this fascinating, quickly evolving industry that is attracting a lot of money. And it's while it's doing a lot of things better than humans, there are also places where we have to be careful about when using them, such as testing edge cases and how to use it safely, how to protect our data at the same time. And yeah, that was a very, very comprehensive talk. So thank you very much for that. Now to the audience, if you still have a question, feel free to put in the Q&A box, and then so others can have a look and upvote, and we can see if we can get to those your question. And for the Q&A, I'll start with the most popular question first. Is New Zealand lagging behind other countries in the adoption of AI? Daniel.
Yeah, this is an interesting question. I think overall, there's no lack of appetite. There's no lack of appetite in terms of trying and using AI, and actually New Zealand is quite a early adopter market for a lot of organizations. When they are trialing their products and services, they often come to countries like New Zealand where there's a limited market size, and they go test with their market. So from a individual adopting AI, that's not necessarily a barrier. What is a barrier is around the investment side. Developing a lot of these foundational AI models is quite an expensive proposition. In New Zealand as an investment vehicle is far behind other countries like the United States in terms of being able to fund these AI companies. But if you're a person interested into joining an AI company or using AI, that's not really a barrier from doing it in New Zealand.
Thank you very much for that. Now, next question. AI is clearly a game changer, especially if you leverage it the right way. What do you think AI will look like in 5 years' time, and what, if any, obstacles do you foresee AI reaching this potential?
I feel like the biggest obstacle, and actually this is probably the most discussed topic at the moment, is around what role does government and does regulation play in AI? If you look at on one hand, I think it is there's one side which is talking about how if people are, or if companies are putting AI and just launching AI into the world without a series of testing, without a series of checks to make sure that it is not dangerous when it's creating societal harm, then that's problematic in one area. But if we over-regulate AI, then that could stifle innovation. So I think this the conversation around how much of AI do you regulate. That's I think we're going to get to that in the next 5 years. I'm hoping, and I think there will be a very clear framework around how do you go about building and using AI in the workplace.
Thank you very much for that. And then we have another one. The word AI doesn't have a good definition. Where are we in terms of defining what AI is or supposed to be? What is AI to you? Is it more than just machine learning tools?
Yeah. Well, Jason, I'm keen to hear your definition on this as well, because I feel AI is has been one of those buzzwords that has been thrown around quite a lot, and it's quite ambiguous. There's definitely an academic terminology definition for AI. But Jason, how would you describe AI?
The funny thing is, within the academia setting, I seem to have gathered different perspectives or different definitions what AI represents as well. Although they're also all mostly aligned in the same direction, is that there are machine learning tools that help us discover patterns or insights within a data set. And AI is kind of like a wrapper around that performs certain actions depending on what the result is for us. So, for example, like the example you've given of writing emails, they'll give us a template, and because this is the machine learning tools are still as good as what the data that we provide it to be. Just like Andrew Ng has said, he's put forward a philosophy of very AI data-centered machine learning development direction. There's bound to be some dirty data out there in the real world that is included in the model, and AI is there to help us to come up with something general. And at this stage, from what I see, we still need to, like you say, we still need to fine tune whatever we get from AI to perhaps to specifically what we want. And what do you think?
Sounds great thoughts there.
Okay, cool. One of the participants would like us to list some of the most trusted industry accepted AI certifications currently available. Do you know of any?
Let me just understand what the question is. So this is around what do you mean by certifications? Is this like ISO certifications or?
Participant hasn't quite specifically defined. I believe it might have been, please correct me if I'm wrong, might be courses that they can do to get, say, certified to be an AI engineer or.
Yes. Okay. I think I understand. This is a really interesting space because there's quite a lot of micro credentials and learning that's around AI. Andrew Ng has a really awesome program. I think it's called landing.ai, where it helps introduce people who do not necessarily come from the field into AI. And there are courses, micro courses where things like AI for everyone, where from a non-technical perspective, all the way through to very technical implementation type certifications. And those are really great training materials. There's a lot of publicly available content out there. Although one thing I just encourage is getting certifications is not the be all end all of getting into the field of AI. One of our first AI engineers we hired did not even go to university. He just loved playing with things on his own time and just experimenting. Start experimenting. I'll say that's probably the best way to get into the field.
Yeah, thank you very much for your insight. Yeah, I also echo that. I think it's evolving into an industry where coming up with your own portfolio, just trying out different things, come up with some projects that show what you can do with AI. It's just as important as gaining certifications, etc. Here's another interesting one. Are there steps we can take as individuals to mitigate the risk of our jobs being taken over by AI?
I love this question. I just feel I think quite often we treat AI as a zero-sum game, as it's coming for my job and then I'm going to be out of work. Whereas what I'm seeing a lot more is if you look at the workflow and just something we talked about just recently, there are a number of different activities and tasks in a job. And not all of them, and actually quite a lot of them, require a human level of judgment and a human to perform. Now, so the way that I see AI personally is very much around giving you wings to be able to move a lot faster and a lot quicker. And in a way, it will help you as an individual contribute more. So it's a really, really good positive around what you're able to do. And if you're worried about AI taking your jobs, I think start using AI, and you'll realize that actually you're able to produce a lot more with it as an assistant.
Yeah, I certainly echo that. I see it as another revolutionary tool, similar to some of the earlier software products such as Excel. It does the less interesting parts of the job for you, so that it frees you up to concentrate on the more interesting parts of your job. And I think it AI is a great tool to even take that step further.
Absolutely. I mean, there are so many in the grand scheme of things. If you look at there's some really big challenges facing our world, our society at the moment. You got climate change, healthcare, education, accessibility. So there are more problems to solve than people available to solve them. And
Yeah,
with tools and aids, that it gives us a shot at solving some of these big problems.
yeah, certainly. As we rely more on AI, what's the risk of making us less intelligent?
I just recall that like there's like this movie, I can't remember what it was, but it's set in the future about robots have taken over everything, and then humans have become so dumb at functioning. I think they like water crops using Gatorade or something.
Yes, I recall that movie with Luke Wilson. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I just feel, yes, there may be certain tasks that we're no longer as efficient or no longer good at. I'd imagine I grew up in the day and age when I had to read a paper map to navigate, and now I just push a button on my Google Maps and it'll navigate me exactly where I need to go, divert traffic. So in a way, certain functions now become very difficult for people. But in terms of a human level of intelligence and our adaptability to perform new tasks, I think that shouldn't be an issue.
Thank you very much for that. Yeah, I echo that. It helps us a lot in a lot of the mundane tasks, and as long as we are conscious about what the AI or the technology is doing for us, and keep that in mind, how the mechanism, at least at a conceptual level, works under the hood, then I think we shouldn't be at too much risk of that. Yeah, you've shown us good examples of tools that can see, read, or hear. How far away are we from combining all of these into a single agent?
Yes, this is quite an often. I'm seeing this in the business organization level quite often, where you have AI doing discrete components of a role and then stringing them together into a pipeline, and then that pipeline will allow us to do more complex tasks that allows you to see, read, help with decision making, flag anomalies. So that's already in process. But I would recommend from a starting point, start experimenting using tools for very specific parts of your role.
Thank you very much for that. Do you think AI will reduce the qualitative human experience and dumb down humans' thinking? Yeah, humans must learn through process and by making mistakes, but AI cuts this process out.
That's a really interesting question. I feel there are so many technologies that probably more in that camp of dumbing down humans. Things like social media, a lot of those technologies probably aren't helping. But in terms of whether it's dumbing our overall intelligence, yeah, I'm undecided on this one. Jason, what do you think?
I think it's how we as users use it, and yeah, because it helps us in a way to focus on things that we're interested in, and I think for just like a lot of content on social media now, they trained on what we engage with and provide us with more of the similar content, and it's us as users can be very easily lost in that world, and it is up to us to be aware of what else is out there, and if we remain conscious of that, we will it wouldn't affect us negatively in that way. Okay, you pointed out replacing proper nouns. Do you think information is being harvested and used for further analysis?
Yeah, this is something that all of the AI companies have it is very clear on in their privacy policies, and I do recommend going, if you're using any AI tool or service, go have a really forensic level of analysis on what they do, what they use your inputs and what they don't use your inputs. So for example, that the Microsoft Azure level of enterprise grade of OpenAI services, that they are very clear around what they won't use your data, and actually that they don't, there's even an option to not let them access to your data from a quality assurance perspective. But different services have different privacy policies, so do go and take the time to understand them.
Cool. We have a couple of minutes left, so we'll do a couple more. What advice would you give to a parent of a child, in terms of educating him, her in this AI environment and preparing them for the future?
Yeah, this is a fascinating question, because I'm a parent myself, and I'm often thinking about how shall I be educating my kids around using or things to be aware of technology, but also from a skills perspective. I think one of our biggest strengths is around our curiosity and our curiosity to want to try things, learn new things, take on new things. And I think as parents, we want to, as much as possible, foster that curiosity at the young age. In terms of technical skills, I think those will all come at the appropriate times, and a lot of technical skills may no longer be required. For example, how many people still know how to do long division, right, manually, right? So I think the skill set where our kids or the next generation will need are going to be vastly different, and I doubt anybody can accurately predict these. So only time will tell.
Yeah, I'm a parent myself as well, and I very much echo the same thing. And yeah, it's hard to predict how technology will evolve, and just like we look at the world now, and we look at and comparing it to the world when we were still in high school, I'd say. Now a lot of jobs now that didn't exist back then, so and that requires a lot of skills that people didn't know about back then, a couple of decades ago. So I think it'll have a similar, the next couple of decades will have a similar evolution, and all we can do is some of the things I personally think myself is the fundamentals, fundamentals of science and technology, and if because all of the new technologies are built on the same foundations, and that's what's the content in school is for, and it prepares the kids for the future, not necessarily for the present world, but for what the future can bring. And I think that might be something that can we can think about and focus on. So one last question, Daniel. Will AI eventually stamp out human creativity, you think?
Yeah, I'm unsure about this question, because I am seeing a lot more that this was always one area where humans. I think we just always thought that'll never be able to replace human ingenuity, creativity. And now we're seeing more and more of AI generated art, AI generated music, AI generated content, emails, and actually like a lot of the news I read is all human, is AI written, and it sounds and looks like a human. So I'm unsure whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think that's a separate discussion. That's more of an ethical discussion. Jason, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I have similar thoughts, like particularly with the recent development of ChatGPT, like a lot of the spin-off technologies such as Midjourney have really surprised us. There are AI tools out there that can generate movie clips, or maybe even containing stories. Maybe they've reached like a movie length as well. So it's really hard to predict how us as a whole population will react to it, and because as we can see, there's also some industry action from the creators from Hollywood, and it'll be interesting on how that evolves. And yeah, it's hard for anyone to predict, I think.
Yeah, I think the rather than look at it as an us versus them type comparison, we should be looking at, well, what are the advantages of combining the human creativity with AI creativity together?
Yeah, that's certainly one very useful way of looking forward and looking forward to it. Thanks everyone for your questions, attention, and participation. It's been a pleasure to discuss AI in the workplace with you today. Today was talk 3 of the 2023 series, with one more to go. Next up on the 10th of October, we have another amazing 40 under 40 speaker, Hannah McQueen, talking about how to build your financial foundations while still having a life. Now, visit the Alumni and Friends website to register, and don't forget to forward the link to a friend, colleague, or fellow student if you think they would be interested in joining too. We'll be sending out a survey to get your feedback, so look out for that in your inbox. Thanks again for joining us today. Have a good day and good evening, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.